Hi everyone and welcome to day 7 of building a DeLorean Time Machine in 20 days. Today we're going to be focusing on the engine lid. I've got that back from the welders and the vents are en route. So we're going to line that up on the back and we'll be making sure it fits and we'll be cutting in hinge holes. I'm also going to finish putting the 3 items on the back, which was the janitrol, the heat exchange pipe and this little alley pipe with the heatsink on top. I'll also be cutting a few small bits on the CNC machine and we will try and get to a little bit of the interior if we can. If not, I'd like to see if I could get the vents lined up today and see if we can get those bolted down. So first off, just because we've got it back, it would be nice to see how it fits. I'm going to take the work bonnet off. And I have got here welded the new bonnet with all the correct pieces, all the correct holes and everything else. Also, I'll show you quickly on the back. I've had the welder do some extra support structures on the back. Now, these are fine as they are, but they do wobble a little. So just to give it a bit of extra rigidity, I've had him put some extra pieces in. Right. And there we are. Perfect. So the difference between this one and a standard bonnet is that it kind of curves on the edges. Engine lid. And on the Time Machine ones, they have to go straight and then drop down. So I should have a little bit of play to get this lined up right. And then what we'll do, I'll drop these down. We'll mark the holes for that, and we'll drill and tap those, and then we can get those on. And then we've got an open and closed bonnet. I'm going to just put a little rubber strip, I think, on this edge just to stop it rubbing against the new bumper that we put on. And then we can start lining things up and, yeah, putting it all together. But that looks good. Hi guys, right, I've now drilled holes in these 2 brackets, so what I'm going to do is pull the bonnet up and just attach a 10mm nut and a washer to each one of those. Right, what I'm also going to be doing on this is, on this little lip, because it sits so close to the bumper, is I'm going to be putting this rubber trim. It's a 5mm thick and it's just a little C-section, so that will go over the edge of this little lip here. And what it's going to do is just soften that the whole way down. Just because this is machine cut as well, it's actually quite sharp. I'm going to squeeze that on there. That will just take a nice little section off the back and will stop anyone from getting cut. You can put this on the bottom of the rear vents as well. It just stops any of the metal aluminium cutting into this bumper. Obviously, driving along it does scratch and you do get that little bit of oomph. Nice, there we are. Then all I'm going to do is peel the 2 little strips off of there. Little red strip there. If I pull that off, then the adhesive that's underneath it's going to stick to the alley. Lovely. Yeah, that's it. Adjust that back on there. Gosh, there we are. Hi guys, right, I'm going to start screwing this unit onto this wall, and just before I do that I need to drill some holes. So what I've got here is the back of the janitrol unit, and I've got 4 little bolts inside the bracket. So I've just drawn that on there. I'm just going to drill those in. Right guys, I'm going to do this on a time lapse because it's not anything particularly interesting. So once I put all these little rings on and get it all lined up, I'll show you what I've done. Hi guys, now that I've put these sections on, I can show you a little bit about why I've done that. We've got the end of the Jantrol here, which is one diameter, and this pipe is another. So what I've done is I've made a spacer. So by putting this and this together, we should be able to get that slid in nicely. There we are. And that's a nice tight fit, and what it's going to do is actually hold that hole in the correct position, because there's no fixings for this. It relies on going through the Jantrol and going onto this alley box. And the other end of this, I've done another spacer on this and screwed it down so that this will then sit neatly and slide in there nice and tight. And then that sits like that on the back of the car. And once I've actually put the fixings through on that one, that sits on there, that orange pipe's actually floating. You can see there, it's not actually on anything. It levels it up nicely. So that's that back section. And I'm going to drill and screw this onto there. And I will screw this onto the base plate. Right, so I put all that together now. We've got the heatsink on the top, we've got the spacer on the side, and we've got the plate on the bottom. So now that's ready to go on the car. Right guys, I've got my bolts now on this Jantrol. So what I'm going to do is I've lined up and drilled 4 little holes in the bulkhead. So hopefully this should line up with a little bit of persuasion. It should go through. There we are. So I can bolt that from the inside now, and that'll be nice and tight. Hi guys, and there we go. We've got the Jantrol, we've got the helicopter heat pipe, and we've got the alley box in at the end. Everything's lined up, everything's on, and it's all fixed. Hi guys, so I've got a few extra items here that I thought I'd just talk you through. We're going to start fitting this stuff to the engine bay today and probably into tomorrow because it's getting quite late now. But we have the front sections of the vents. Now these go either side of the reactor core, and yeah, there's loads of different bolts. All these little holes match the A-car. And then we've got 3 little fixings here, which will eventually be for some of this, which will pull out, go from there, and end up going on to the outside of one of these. These are oil separators. These were off aircrafts. You can still get originals, but they're so hard to get hold of because these came out of a 1950s aircraft, I believe, and 1960s aircraft. I think they're called a Pesco oil separator. These are replica ones. I've got to clean them up a little bit. I started sanding smooth on some sections, but you have one of these either side. They sit about there, roughly. And then we have these little heat sinks. Now, these will be going on the circular aluminium base that houses the Polara, the 1967 Polara hubcap, and on top of that is the GC58 stator with custom cap. I've actually got the stator upstairs, so I'll go grab that in a second. But these are little heat sinks. These come from Canada, and this is from the same company that provided the originals for the film. You can still get these online, which is brilliant. And there are 18 of these that go around the base. And if you can see, we've got a single screw fitting for the top and 2 for the bottom. When you position it on the car, you have 1 in the center, and then you've got the rest that come out either side. I think it was 18 or 19. I'll double check my math in a minute. The central one that you have on either side 2 90-degree elbows, fuel lines, and they run down and actually connect to the front of the Pesco separators, or that way around. So that's a little bit that we're going to have to drill in and bolt on tomorrow. Then we have this little thing, which is a crossover tank. This bit I'm getting changed because it's not what I ordered, so I'm getting a new one of these. But the elbows are all right, and I'm going to paint these a slightly better blue. They sit on top of there. I have a little vent here. Now this is a custom-made vent, and it goes over 2 circular sections. I'll show you on the back in a minute. I also have these nice little elbows, and they go either side of the reactor core on the front, and we have some hosing that goes out and around and tucks underneath the back of these. Then we have this lovely little radio vent. I can't remember the specific name for it now off the top of my head, but these are wonderful. You can't get the originals anymore. They're too hard to get hold of, but this is one that was made, a 3D printed one, and I've had the labels made, and I put them on, and then I've just sprayed them and dirtied them down, and it's supposed to look a bit like an exhaust vent, and this goes right on the tail of the boot with these right behind it, either side, a little cap in the middle. I have another terminal strip that will be going on the engine bay. I believe it's right in the very back. It might even be on the bulkhead side of things rather than the engine lid. I also have this lovely Robinson's aviation mount. This is a gyro mount out of an aircraft or a helicopter. The original one that was on the car went missing. I believe Joe Walter and some of the other guys found it in an auction and bought it back to put on the original A car. But this one is a really, really good copy. It's got a lot of detail, and there's a lot of time and effort that's been taken to measure the original one and produce this. So it's a really lovely part because you couldn't get hold of these. So anyone that had one in the 90s or early 2000s would have had something very crude, and it wouldn't have been this good in detail. But these are just really lovely parts to get hold of. And then we have the gold or silver medical heat sink, which I need to double check. I think there's 1 or 2 components I still need to put on the top, but that'll be going on the engine bay as well. And that's all the parts I've got to show you for the minute. So I'll set the camera up and I'll position them where they go on the engine lid, just so you can have a general idea. And I'm hoping that our welders are going to come and bring the rest of the vents tonight. If not, it will be tomorrow. But it'd be nice to get those positioned, and they've really helped me out. It's really, really nice to have fabricators that know what they're doing, and they've come up with a nice sliding solution for the vents on the back to help me out. So we had a little bit of an idea, and they've come up with something, and it looks like it's going to work really well. So I'll show you that in a minute as well, if they drop them off. Right, so I've just put a little bit of tape on the back of this bumper just because we were lining up vents and things, and you don't want to scratch the paintwork while we're lining things up. So I've put a little bit of tape on there, so excuse that. But I'll start grabbing a few of these and we'll set them out roughly where they're going to go. So first off is the vent, and that covers this little double hole here, but still allows the exhaust heat to come out. So that sits there with the louvres facing the front of the car, so any cold air coming down actually go in. We've got the 2 front sections of the vents. Now these sit, 1 roughly about there, and 2 about there. And they're roughly in line with that. So yeah, about there. And about there. Then we have our Gyroshock aviation mount, or Robinson's aviation mount. It goes with this little section facing the car, and actually goes on this little square here. So it's going to sit about there. Then we have our little silver or gold medical heatsink with a little bit in there, and that actually sits just there. Now I've got to double check, but I have a feeling this bolts on about there, but we'll double check that against my photos. It may even go on here. I just need to double check that from memory. I'm doing that one from memory. Then we have our little vent that sits right at this back section here, and then we have our little elbows that sit about there, and they'll have hoses coming out, and they'll actually, the black hose go along the inside of the vent, tuck under here, and where we've got the two oil separators, they just tuck and they lose, they get lost underneath. So these sit about there, maybe if not a bit further back. I'll have to double check. For the meantime, I'll get the other housing I've got for the center, just so we can line it up and have a little bit of a look. I'll also bring down the stator as well, which is the center section. I grab that and grab that one. I'll put that there for a minute. That's the stator, which goes on the very top of the reactor core. And then we have this, which is an aluminium made base. Slide that up there for a second. So this is actually positioned right over these holes. This allows enough engine heat to come out, also allowing enough to come out of these two holes, because we've taken the original lid off. So really you're stopping any heat coming out of the car, and you don't want it to overheat. These two bolt on about there, so they're a little bit higher, and that allows for the hoses, which are the same thickness of that, so what's that, about 50 millimeters, to travel around and tuck underneath. So these sit 2 or 3 inches off of the ground about there, screwed onto that section. But they live there with a center cap piece. And then this, which is a really nice bit, so this is all 3D printed, and there's quite a lot of detail that goes into this. To find an original one of these, you're looking at £4,000 or £5,000. They are beyond rare, so they're super hard to get hold of. So there was a limited run a few years ago of some metal made ones, and even those were, you know, in the thousands. I had one for my original build, but really, for the amount of damage they get from flying debris or bits going in and out, the 3D printed ones are a lot more sturdier than they used to be, and they withhold the heat of the engine or the sun, which is brilliant. But that's going to sit there on top of the Polara hubcap, and that's going to have this little yellow cap. It slides and slots in, so that's going to sit there. So put that inside for a minute, and then I'll show you the heat sinks. So these little heat sinks, so they go one there, then work their way around. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Oh, sorry. 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So it should be roughly 15. Let's just one more time double check that, and then you'll know if you need to order any. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. 15, yeah. So you need 15 of these heat sinks per reactor core base. That'll look nice when they're actually on, and then you've got the hubcap and then the stator on top. It really starts to come together, and I'm hoping we'll get the vents very shortly, and then I can try and line some bits up. I'll cut a little bit of hose and put a bit of hose in, so you get an idea of what that looks like as well. There we go. So I've got those little hoses there, which will go and sit underneath these. What I have just noticed, and even I sometimes mix things up, this orange pipe should be the other way around. So I'm going to switch that over quick, just to make sure it is correct. This actually sits on this plastic bit of bulkhead. So I've just had a little look on the photo. So it actually sits on the back here, not on the engine lid. So we'll get that screwed and mounted as well, which will be perfect. But I'm just going to switch this around and then we'll keep on looking at this. So they didn't take too long, but now this is the correct way to match the photos. So sometimes when you are screwing things on, it's worth double checking your reference photos. Unfortunately, all of my reference photos are on the same phone that I'm filming with. So I have to keep on switching between. I remember probably 95% of this car, but little details, sometimes you miss something. So it's always good to double check and have a little look. Hi guys, we're going to leave it there for today, but tune in tomorrow to see what else we do.